Good morning, everybody. It is October 14th, 2022. This is the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. This is a continuance of our meeting from, oh gosh, what was it? Yesterday, I guess. And we will start by taking a roll call.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Ackerman,
Present.
Commissioner Vogue, Commissioner Cross,
Present.
Commissioner McGowan,
Here.
Commissioner Mesner,
Here.
Commissioner Oath,
Here.
Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 6 out of 7 commissioners present today.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you. We have 2 matters on our agenda today. The first is a continuance from our previous agenda in which we were going to have a discussion amongst ourselves about what we wanted to see in terms of applications for the Martinez-Irwin Fund and the monies that are associated therewith. Would like to recognize Commissioner Messner, who put together a template in terms of an application. And maybe if you want to walk us through that, Commissioner Messner, we can have a discussion.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. As I think folks remember, a few weeks ago, I had provided an update on the Martinez-Irwin Fund public projects that were developed, both as part of the order creating the Martinez-Irwin Fund, as well as some approvals by the commission since that. And so in that kind of summary of the projects that have taken place up until this point, we've seen some presentations from those, which I thought were really good as far as some of the information and research that's been done utilizing the Martinez-Irwin Fund. We've got some more presentations still slated to be on the docket over the next couple of weeks. But in the interim, I wanted to have a conversation about what the commission may like to see in a application for additional projects that may be considered for funding by the Martinez-Irwin Fund. I'll note that based on some of our previous discussions, some elements that were kind of kicked around as things that should be included in an application or consideration for projects for funding from the Martinez-Irwin Fund, had a few things that I had put down from our discussions, which is number 1, ensure that future projects comply with the intent of the order that states that projects funded by the Martinez-Irwin Public Project Fund would protect or otherwise aid the COGCC in fulfilling its mission to protect public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. Number 2, that we allow maximum discretion in the utilization of the fund as allowed by the order. Number 3, that there should be some consideration as to whether a proposed project ties into or is compatible with previously funded projects and that it perhaps builds upon previous research. Number 4, that proposed projects have clear and measurable goals and actionable items that tie into the COGCC mission to protect public health, safety, welfare, the environment, wildlife resources. That the proposed projects have clear reporting requirements and an understanding of how we would utilize the data. That there be some consideration for use of matching funds outside of the Martinez-Irwin Fund. That there be clear communication between COGCC, CDPHE, Kerr-McGee on proposed projects, and to generally solicit feedback from COGCC and CDPHE to understand where we have gaps in data and what questions we want answered. As to the last one, I still intend to have a conversation at the conclusion of the previously funded Martinez-Irwin Fund projects to kind of dive into that feedback piece from COGCC and CDPHE on what possible projects may be considered or where we have gaps in data that may want to consider having projects associated with them. But in the meantime, I sent everyone this morning a proposed grant application for Martinez-Irwin funds that could potentially be utilized for folks that have potential projects that they're considering at this point in order to be able to submit the necessary information for consideration by the commission. And so, I mean, I can go through that briefly here. And this is trying to incorporate some of the feedback that was provided in previous commission meetings, and then just put it into a format that's a little more, I don't know, a little more formal than perhaps some of the proposals that have put forth before us initially. So one of the things that we had discussed is like an initial white paper or a cover letter that could be provided to just kind of tip us off on what the general gist of the application or the project or the request for funding would be. And so I put in there a cover letter that should include the purpose of the grant request and how the proposal meets the stated objectives of the Martinez-Irwin Fund and aids the COGCC in its mission to protect public health, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. Then general contact information so that we've got a clear record of who's involved with the project, how to get a hold of them. And then a narrative. And in the narrative, this is a guideline. Certainly we would want this information provided in the application, but it's certainly not limited to this information, but it would include an organizational background, goals of the organization, a general program or project summary that includes the issue or opportunity that they're trying to address, goals and objectives, activities, and a timeline associated with the project. The next one is the evaluation and reporting for the program project. That kind of ties into those measurable goals. And so this one would propose how the project or program would be evaluated, the metrics used, the results determined, and the reporting expectations. And then a program or project budget, including any anticipated matching funds, either internal or external to the organization, and then consideration of long-term funding mechanisms outside of the Martinez-Irwin Fund for projects that may need to continue forward. Then there's a section in there for collaboration, understanding that some of these projects have multiple organizations that may be involved with them. The continuity piece is how does this, if any, tie into previously funded projects or programs by the Martinez-Irwin Fund, and then any additional information that needs to be provided in the application. So that's a snapshot of that. It's simplistic, again, to try to broadly allow projects to be considered within the Martinez-Irwin Fund. But happy to take any feedback on things that you'd like to see added, subtracted, modified on that.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner Messner, for taking a first crack at all this. I think your overall approach looks good. A couple of questions, and it might be helpful at the beginning to put out the purpose for the Martinez-Irwin Fund and like just cite back and or cut and paste from the order so that folks don't have to go dig that up. And that way we can ensure that projects are consistent with the purpose of the order.
Sure.
And then wondering from a just sort of practicality perspective, are we in hearings manager Larson or Ms. Amaro or someone, are we thinking about posting this as kind of like a Google form or just posting this document and that people can cut and paste and then fill it out accordingly? Don't know about that.
I mean, previously we did have a Google form that had 2 questions associated with it. It was pretty simple. But the submittals that were attached to the applications that we received were pretty robust. And so I think this could be potentially incorporated into a Google form, or it could be, I guess I don't know exactly how we would do that. So,
well, we can just leave that to the finer minds that do our IT stuff over at the commission of the website. But again, just sort of adding the purpose clause, and then otherwise, I think this is pretty well done. Other commissioners with comments? Commissioner Cross?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Messner, for putting this together. I like the layout of it a lot. I was also going to say, I think noting that it should meet the purpose. We should remind everyone on the form what the purpose is. So I agree with that comment. I also particularly like that you included the collaboration piece. As we've seen from some of the presentations, not only are people working together with other groups often, but it also can be relying on and kind of comparing some of the data that's come up previously. And so I think kind of putting that information in there is also helpful, not only to see who all will be working on this, but also how it can be used in conjunction with other projects.
Okay.
Any other thoughts from folks? Commissioner Ackerman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Commissioner Messner. Just one simple thought. We mentioned matching funds, but I didn't see anywhere that we called out in kind. It would be nice to know if they also are, including in kind contributions or in-kind contributions. So it might be worth a separate call out for that.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Ackerman. I did include it in there under the program or project budget, and I didn't call it out maybe as explicitly as I should have, but in the narrative there, it says, please provide a full proposed budget, including any matching funds anticipated internal or external to the organization and long-term funding mechanisms. I can put another bullet in there, maybe explicitly calling out the matching funds if you think that's important.
Yeah, I do. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I will also note that in the discussions that we had previously, that we were limiting the applicants to state agencies or organizations that were partnering with state agencies as to who can apply for the funds. And I think generally we were considering CDPHE, COGCC, and CPW as the primary applicants for this.
Any other comments? All right, sounds good. Go for it, and we'll move forward with it along those lines, and we will consider the Martinez-Irwin Fund agenda item accomplished. We now will take up the second item on our agenda this morning, which was an executive session. Would look toward AAG Mercer for setting up next steps on that front.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will just read our executive session script, and then we will go into the separate Zoom, have executive session, and then come back to the public session. Pursuant to the Open Meetings Law, the Commission is entitled to enter into executive session at this regular meeting to receive legal advice pursuant to CRS 246402. The topic of the executive session was identified on the agenda, and that is to receive information, legal advice, and analysis as authorized under the Open Meetings Act regarding the Commission's review and consideration of the Crestone Coslet East OGDP, docket number 2107-00115. And with that, Chairman Robbins, I invite you to encourage a motion to enter into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to enter into executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, for those members of the public that are listening in, the commissioners will be leaving this Zoom session. We will be going into a Zoom session for the executive session. We plan on returning back to this session after the executive session is over. We do not have any other business, and so once we return, all we will be doing is adjourning for the day. You're happy to stick around and wait for that adjournment, but you don't have to. It's up to you. And with that, commissioners, I will see you in executive session in here just a sec. Okay, folks, this is the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission. It is now 10:47 on Friday, October 14th. We have returned from executive session. I would recognize AAG Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you just noted, we're returning from executive session. During that executive session, the commission received legal advice and analysis regarding the Coslet East OGDP. No decisions were made and no votes were taken. And with that, Chairman Robbins, I invite you to encourage a motion to exit executive session.
So encouraged.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second to exit executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are out of executive session. Folks, I don't believe we had anything further on our agenda for this morning. So with that, we would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you next week.